Desmond Ridder has shown promising signs of growth the last few weeks, but the turnovers still remain a concern. So is the glass half full or half empty when it comes to evaluating their young quarterback at this point in the season?
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to another illustrious episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Falcons is brought to you by the Game Time app. All you got to do is download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So, guys, if you don't know me, I'm your very humble host, Aaron Freeman. Formerly covered the Falcons for many years at falcfans.com, RIP. Used to be on Twitter at falcfans, RIP. Still going strong here on this illustrious podcast, though. Right? You also may know me as Sirius Black, as Mr. Drew, as so many other aliases. But of course, we want to give a special shout out to the everydayers, though, that make this very illustrious podcast their first listen each and every day. And to become an everydayer, all you got to do, guys, is subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. So today's episode features a first-time appearance from our guest, Miles Garrett of Fox 5 Atlanta, sports anchor and reporter there. And he's going to talk with us about his thoughts on this Week 7 game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, talk about Desmond Ridder, you know, if the glass is half full or empty for him, talk about the defense, talk about the running game, all those various things. So without further ado, let's jump into that conversation with Miles Garrett of Fox 5 Atlanta right now. Welcome back, everyone, to another illustrious episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast with a illustrious guest. He is the all-pro defensive end for the Cleveland. I'm sorry. I make that mistake all the time.
Had to get it in there.
Yeah. We, of course, are joined by Miles Garrett, not the all-pro defensive end for the Cleveland Browns, although I'm sure Miles Garrett playing well has been more beneficial to your mentions as of late. But, of course, we're talking about Miles Garrett, the sports anchor and reporter for Fox 5 Atlanta. Miles, my friend, welcome to the show.
Good to be back, Aaron. Missed you on Twitter here lately. So good to talk Falcons with you.
I appreciate that. I think you're probably the only person that misses me on Twitter. But well, let's talk about this Falcons Week 7 win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and let's talk about Desmond Ridder. Right, he's been the sort of topic du jour on these Twitter streets that I am no longer part of. And, you know, I'm curious to pick your brain on sort of where you're at with Desmond Ridder, especially over the last couple of games where you've seen an uptick in his performance, but you've also seen some of those hiccups with the 3 turnovers in back-to-back games, 3 interceptions against Washington, 3 fumbles against Tampa Bay. But like I'm looking at some of the other numbers and looking at, you know, Desmond Ridder's, you know, adjusted net yards per attempt being over 7, which is typically on par with a top 10 quarterback. If you look at other advanced metrics like expected points added, EPA, he's 8th in EPA over the last 3 weeks. So a lot of numbers are telling you that Desmond Ridder is playing better, but there's those numbers with the turnovers that suggest that maybe this is still an issue. So I'm just curious, Miles, when you look at it, do you look at it from that sort of glass half full perspective, or do you look at it as a glass half empty?
It's an interesting spot, honestly, because I think right now you're sort of getting close to that area where you're like, okay, he's going to need to start showing some things soon now, because, you know, it's you still, I think it's safe to say, consider him a rookie, because I believe it's only 10 games he's played right now, 10, 11 or something like that. And, you know, I've seen this all over Twitter, you know, a lot of Falcons fans comparing his first few starts to Matt Ryan's first few starts, to Michael Vick's first few starts. And they're honestly fairly comparable. You know, even when you compare the wins, the touchdowns, the interceptions, you know, again, different game when Matt entered the league, when Mike entered the league, you know, it was more run centric. It wasn't as pass heavy as it has basically become at this point. But all that being said, you look at it from that perspective and he's doing great. He's on the good trajectory to be where he needs to be. Now, the turnovers are an issue, because the turnovers that he's having are, I don't want to call them inexcusable, but just it's stuff you need to know. I was talking with DJ Shockley yesterday when we did our post-game show. You know, just stuff as simple as when you run into the end zone and the ball is in your hand facing the defender. I mean, he said it himself. That's quarterbacking 101. You know, you got to have the ball away from the defender. You know, just little things like that. Now, I think those 2 other turnovers you can potentially not put on him. I think that fumble at the 1 yard line, you can partially accredit that to Drew Dahlman and the snap exchange there. And then, of course, you have the fumble where, he kind of gets hit. It's just a good play by the defense there that sort of happens. But, of course, I think that fumble there in the end zone that he had as he was running in was the more blatant one. So all those things considered, I think we're getting close to sort of that judgment call to where you need to kind of figure out if he's your guy long term. But that being said, he still has his moments where you're like, okay, like this is what they're seeing. That throw to Scotty Miller, the throw to Kaderil Hodge on the first play of the game. He gets some zip on it. I think he's got a lot more arm strength than people give him credit for. He really can throw the ball. I think we saw it a few weeks ago with the Mac Hollins catch, when he throws it deep. A lot of folks said he underthrew it, but I believe that was about a 60, 70-yard throw. I mean, it was a long throw, and he was fairly accurate with it. So there's a lot of things to consider, but if we're answering a glass half full, glass half empty, it's kind of difficult to give a yes or no answer on that, just because we are getting close to that, decision. And with that decision, he is working through some mistakes. Arthur Smith has said it. He's putting them in position to win games. He did it this past week. He could have thrown another interception there. He could have fumbled the ball, but no, he led a good drive down the field, hitting Kyle. That was a great throw to Kyle Pitts. Obviously Kyle made the play necessary to get into field goal range, but it was a good throw. So it's weird. He just kind of has these moments where you see what they're seeing, but then it's just these facepalm moments where you're like, come on, you can't do that. It's just sort of this basic stuff. So it's kind of hard to answer that question, I'd say.
Yeah, no, I understand, because it was frustrating yesterday with that fumble that you're talking about where he gets stripped at the goal line. And like 2 weeks ago, this was what I talked about on Locked On Falcons, because he had a touchdown run against Houston where the ball got knocked out as he was crossing the plane, but fortunately he had crossed the plane. And so that's what you're talking about, where it's like these mistakes are like, it'd be one thing if he's making new mistakes and you'd be like, okay, well, this is just part of the growing process.
Absolutely.
But when it's situations like that, especially in a tight ball game where it's like, if they score that touchdown, like, not to say the Falcons are, cruising to victory, but you're feeling a lot more comfortable about their ability to win that game late. And so those are the frustrating things, but I think there's certainly reasons to be optimistic that he's trending in the right direction. You just got to have to see that trend continue over the next couple of weeks. And hopefully over that period of time, you'll also see the turnovers stop being the issue that they have been so far through 7 starts this year. So,
and I think one interesting nugget too, I think I saw this on Twitter the other day as well. It might be frustrating to hear this, but you take away, and again, this sounds such a, homer stat to throw out there, but you take away those turnovers. Dez had a really good game yesterday. It was very efficient, 19 to 25 through the air. Outside of those 3 turnovers, it was a pretty good game. You're seeing that improvement. So like I was saying, it's sort of this extreme hot, extreme cold growth process you're seeing with him.
Yeah, definitely. So I think the glass is half full at this point. I want to say that, but then next week if he turns the ball over 3 times again,
roller coaster.
It'll it's been a roller coaster of a ride with him so far. But I think there's reasons to believe that he's trending in the right direction. We'll just sort of have to see if that becomes true, right? It's a level of patience that we need to have that very few people have, I think, when it comes to especially young quarterbacks. So
especially quarterbacks,
yeah. So we will talk about something that we don't have to patiently wait for as we continue today's episode, talking about how the defense has been impressive in every game this week or this season, and we'll get Miles' thoughts on what to him was the most impressive from this defense, specifically in this Bucs game, as well as what he's seen from them this season. So we'll get into that, guys, as we continue today's Locked On Falcons. So, guys, we know that the success of the Atlanta Falcons depends on the team that they surround their quarterback with. And you also may be a small business owner or hiring manager that knows that your team in 2023 also depends on who you bring into your building. And the great thing is that you don't have to worry about getting punched in the mouth by Vita Vea or Jeffrey Simmons in order to find the right people. right? All you got to do is go to LinkedIn Jobs, right? LinkedIn Jobs is going to allow you the platform that's going to be able to get your job in front of the qualified candidates that you want to match with, that have the right skills, experiences, that are going to help you achieve your goals. It's very easy with LinkedIn to put in front of millions of member profiles. You can rate and screen applicants based off of the job qualifications that you're looking for, all on one platform. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs is going to help you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Now, I'm sure there are many of you out there that have $10 right now in your pocket, and you would love an easy way to turn that $10 into $250. And I got the thing for you. It's Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you got to do is pick 2 or more players, right? And based off of more or less on their projected stats, right, you can win your money. And the more entries you make, the more money you win, up to 25 times the money on your entry. Prize Picks is easy. It's simple. You just open the app. You just put more on Bijan Robinson, although that probably wouldn't have helped you out last week and probably not the last 2 weeks, but it's usually a safe way to go. Just go more on Bijan's projections, or you can zig and zag and go less if you're feeling that type of way, right? And that's how you can turn $10 into $250. You're already halfway there. Just get one more on those projections by going to prizepicks.com/lockedonnfl and use code LOCKEDONNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/lockedonnfl and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for that deposit match. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. So continuing here with Miles Garrett of Fox 5 Atlanta, we are talking about the Falcons' defensive performance. And once again, for the 7th week in a row, this Falcons defense played an excellent game, kept this team in the game so that the offense could go out there and win it late with that Younghoe Koo walk-off field goal, which I think is now the 3rd time we've had a game winner from Younghoe Koo this year. So definitely, the defense has been doing their part. And I'm just curious, Miles, watching the game yesterday, what was sort of the most impressive thing that you saw from the defense against the Bucs, and maybe as well as what's been most impressive about that unit throughout the season?
I think just basically getting the stops where you need to get the stops. I mean, they can't carry this team forever. Like, they basically have all season long. I mean, the running joke, I think, is you put this defense with the Falcons from 2008 to 2017. Who knows how many Super Bowls they had, because that was always the conversation. You had the offense, but the defense was always lacking. I think it's kind of vice versa this year. But no, I think yesterday, especially there with the David Onyemata sack late in the game, the Bucs are driving downfield, and it's oh man, like, are they going to score a touchdown? Falcons going to have to score a touchdown to win the game. David Onyemata makes the big sack. I think you go the drive before that, where the Bucs are also driving downfield. Richie Grant comes up with an interception. So it's sort of that bend but don't break thing. I mean, and it's not even that. I feel like that's even kind of being rude to them, just because of the points they haven't given up this season. They haven't given up a lot of points, but I feel like you see a lot where the opposing team will drive downfield, and then suddenly it goes 3 and out, just it abruptly stops like that. So the secondary has been obviously an extreme strong point for this team. I said it in the preseason, just because of adding Jesse Bates as your quarterback back there. AJ Terrell, we know what he can do. I know he had kind of a not as good game against Mike Evans, but he did have some bright moments. Mike Evans is the best receiver in the division. So, you got best versus best there. I think Mike Evans may have gotten the better of him there. But the emergence of Jeff Okudah has been huge. I'd love to see a potential extension for him if he can stay healthy, of course. And Richie Grant, I think Richie Grant is especially yesterday, I think you're starting to see him kind of come out a little bit. He started off a little slow this season, I think. I was a little surprised to see Jalen Hawkins sort of disappear like he did. And of course, he was released, but he was a guy that I thought was going to maybe have a little bit more of an impact for this team. But regardless, the secondary has been a strong suit. And I really did think the loss of Troy Anderson was going to hurt this linebacking core a lot more than it has. Caden Ellis has stepped up big time for this group. Lorenzo Carter has done his thing there. So you've seen a lot of guys who have kind of taken up the slack a little bit. I want to see Arnold Ebiketie get to the quarterback a little bit more. I think that's the big glaring thing for this defense so far, is just the lack of sacks, because they're not giving up points, and they're getting pressure too. Like, they're getting in the vicinity of the quarterback. They're making him very uncomfortable, but those sack numbers just aren't quite what I think you want them to be at this point. They still don't have that edge rusher of sorts. That's why you're seeing all the Danielle Hunter talk, of course, for good reason. He's the best in the league. So, I think it's been a plethora of good things for that defensive side, but I think the main thing has been getting a stand when you need it, because they're putting the offense constantly in position to win the game and keeping them in it. So I think that's the biggest thing for them.
Well, since you brought it up, we might as well go deeper on it. We're about a week away from the trade deadline. So are you count yourself in the camp of, let's make a move and get another pass rusher in here?
It's hard because the defense has been doing so well. Like I'm honestly of the camp of, get an offensive player, because the offense is the one that's struggling right now. I mean, obviously a guy like Danielle Hunter would take this defense to another level, but the defense hasn't been your issue this season. It's been offense. You need sort of that spark there. And whether or not that falls on the quarterback, on the, the play calling, who knows? Maybe you could use some offensive line help or another receiving threat. I feel like they're relatively set at running back. I think that's probably the strongest suit they have on offense. But I feel like those are sort of the two glaring positions on offense that maybe you'd want to make a move for. But yeah, I mean, if the Falcons did make a move theoretically for a Danielle Hunter, I don't think you'd find anyone upset about that, just because of what he brings to the table. And let's be honest, this team hasn't had a bona fide edge rusher since John Abraham. So it's very much needed for this team, and could take this defense to another level.
Yeah. I get it. I don't see a Hunter trade being likely. I don't see the Falcons making that big, bold move for an edge rusher like that. But I certainly understand why people are pushing for it, because it does feel like that's going to probably be a priority this offseason. And, if you can make that move today as opposed to waiting 6 months, it makes sense. But we'll see what comes of that. I'm sure we'll talk more about potential trade options later this week on Locked On Falcons. But we'll wrap up today's episode talking about the Falcons running game, which looked pretty solid, looked like the old Falcons running game with 156 yards against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And so I'll pick Miles' brain to see if he thinks this running game is back to form after going quiet for a couple of weeks. And we'll get into that as we wrap up today's episode. Guys, buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful, and Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy all the tickets to sports, music, comedy, theater near you. They have last-minute killer deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guaranteed. Game Time is taking the guesswork out of buying tickets. It's the only ticketing app that you need. It's going to give you peace of mind with every purchase. You can see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what you're getting when you arrive. You're getting all-in prices, so you're not going to be slapped with any hidden fees, and you can buy your tickets in just seconds with 2 taps. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So wrapping up here with Miles Garrett of Fox 5 Atlanta. Let's talk about this running game. And it's been a couple of weeks with the Falcons not being able to get their run game going. They were able to do that against a tough Bucs front, and they were able to do it without Bijan Robinson to the tune of 156 yards rushing. You got some value from Desmond Ridder. You got Tyler Algier and Cordero Patterson. And it looked a lot like the 2022 Falcons running game with Marcus Mariota out there running like Ridder was, and sort of Algier and CP being that two-headed backfield that was very productive last year, top 3 rushing attack. And so it's like, okay, like it's starting to feel like they're back to form. And it's like, okay, once we get Bijan back doing what he's been doing, all of a sudden now the vision of this being the most dominant, overwhelming run game in the history of football, feels like it could start to come to fruition. But am I putting the cart before the horse, or, are you feeling like that when it comes to this running game as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of Falcons fans have been sort of waiting to see what Cordero Patterson is going to be doing this season, because he hasn't really done anything so far this year, whether that's because of injury or just because of the success of Bijan Robinson. You haven't really had to use a guy like him. But yeah, I mean, I think yesterday's game showed you that he is still Cordero Patterson. He can still run the ball very effectively in this Falcons offense. And Tyler Algier too. I mean, he's another guy who really kind of had a big game for the first time in a long time. I mean, people forget very quickly. This was a 1,000-yard rusher last year. Tyler Algier is still a dude back there. And even in the passing game, he had that one big catch there. I believe it was on third down from Desmond, kind of going downfield. So he does have that receiving threat as well. But one thing I would like to see more of, and I think we saw a little bit of it yesterday, is more of Dez running the ball, because I think that adds an entirely new dynamic to this rushing attack, because it is sort of a double-edged sword, because you don't want to see Dez take too many hits that he doesn't need to take. He's a quarterback at the end of the day. But I do think that adds another dimension to it, because Desmond Ridder can run the ball. This isn't Matt Ryan back there. I don't even think this is Marcus Mariota back there. I think Desmond is a lot better runner than people give him credit for. Now, he does need to hold on to the football a little bit better, but I do think at the end of the day, using those read options with him can be extremely effective in open space, because I mean, all the eyes are going to be on Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, all those guys, for good reason. They're dynamic playmakers. But I think Desmond can make some more things happen. I'll use those words with his legs, whether that's in the passing game or the running game. I have been impressed with his pocket mobility. He does a very good job, I think, of kind of staying in the pocket and not freaking out like we kind of saw last year with Marcus Mariota. I think he sort of would just lock in on a first read a lot and just kind of use his legs after that. But I think there's kind of a happy medium there you can see with Desmond, that once he gets more comfortable back there, he can feel more okay with using his legs to sort of put the defense off balance and make them consider him, maybe get a guy off of Bijan Robinson, get a guy off of a wide receiver. So I'd like to see that element of the running game, but I do think that yesterday was a great indication of it still works. Teams haven't figured it out yet. Like, Arthur Smith does a very good job of scheming up good plays for his rushing attack. And hopefully Bijan Robinson's head is feeling okay this upcoming week, and things will return to normal.
Yeah, definitely. It was nice to see, because I just, that was probably the biggest disappointment for me through the last couple of weeks, which is like, where's the Falcons run game at? It's like, this was the promise. And
to defense's credit, you got to play to your strengths. You know what the Falcons' main thing is. It's running the ball. So you want to make Desmond Ridder beat you. And to their credit, it has worked the last few weeks. So I think that was sort of a big element of it. Not all of it, but I do think it was a big element that they wanted to take that game out of the equation.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And it just goes back to last year, because like, teams knew that the Falcons would run the ball, right? They were like, we'll try to make Marcus Mariota beat us. And they couldn't really stop the run. And it was just like, let's get back to that. Let's get back to just being able to run the football, regardless of what defenses are doing, like we were last year. And I thought yesterday's game showed that, and hopefully we'll see more of those games moving forward. And so if you have that sort of stable foundation of a run game, that's going to be a much better environment, I think, to see what Desmond Ridder can do and add to your offense as a passer moving forward. If your run game is good, as opposed to what it felt like the last couple of weeks, where you had Ridder throwing the ball 40 plus times, and it felt like you relying on Ridder to kind of carry your offense. And I don't think that's a place where the Falcons want to be. So I think yesterday's game on the ground game was a breath of fresh air. And so I think that's more what you want from this team moving forward. And so it was good to sort of see that. But Miles, I appreciate you joining me. Are there any sort of parting words you want to let the listeners know, or anything you want to plug before we duck out of here?
Yeah, no, I mean, we, for those unfamiliar, we are the official partners of the Atlanta Falcons at Fox 5. So for any Falcons coverage, you can check out my Twitter or X, whatever it is today, at Miles Garrett TV. We post all sorts of Falcon stuff. We're the only TV station that usually travels with the team. So we're always in the locker room post-game, always there during practices during the week. So any and all Falcons coverage, that's where you can find me.
Absolutely. Go, guys, check him out. Miles, again, appreciate you for coming on. Your first appearance here on Locked On Falcons. We'll try to get you back on sooner, because I've been like, oh, I need to get Miles on the podcast for, it's been probably over a year. And it's I'm like, oh, I'll wait. And then just procrastinating. So we'll get you back on. Hopefully, you won't have to wait another year to get on.
Hey, hopefully you're back on Twitter soon so we can have more interactions.
Okay, sure. Yeah, don't hold your breath on that one. But appreciate you again, Miles. Thank you for joining us on today's Locked On Falcons. So, guys, that's going to do it for us here. Again, want to thank Miles Garrett for joining us on today's episode. I'm sure he enjoyed me confusing him with the All-Pro defensive end. I'm sure he hasn't heard that a million times before. But yeah, here on this illustrious podcast, we love to run a joke into the ground. So we'll just keep on doing that, and we'll keep trucking along this week. We'll be back tomorrow with an all 22 review. I try not to go into these with too much of a mindset of what exactly I'm going to break down, but one of the things I will focus on, and we'll see if I have thoughts on it enough to share it on the all 22 review tomorrow, will be sort of Ridder versus the Blitz. So that will be something I'll pay extra attention to. And we'll see if I have additional thoughts that can, turn that into a 5 to 10 minute segment of that film review. But for those of you that are interested in, checking that out, the all 22 reviews are also our mailbag Q&A episode. So you can submit questions via a variety of platforms, email lockedonfalcons@mail.com. You can do it on Twitter at Locked On Falcons if you feel so inclined, but very low probability that I'll see it. I'll probably be more likely to look at the Discord server, Locked On Falcons. You can find a link to that in the description below. And of course, we also have the Locked On Falcons Insiders, where you can get that one-on-one conversation with me via text message. It's $4.99 a month, but it's 14-day free trial. You get that one-on-one conversation where you can ask those questions, and you'll get priority on future Q&As, including tomorrow's episode. If you submit a question via that, just hit joinsubtext.com/LockedOnFalcons to join, or hit that link in the description below. But in addition to getting that priority on Q&As and being able to provide your feedback on a whim, if you're curious of, should you add, peas to your, egg fried rice or something like that, I can give you that take as well at, 10:30 at night or whatever you need. I'm there for you. That's the beauty of being a Locked On Falcons insider. But of course, you also get access to the extended all 22 review, where typically you get an extra 30 minutes of high definition film breakdown, in addition to what, the commoners, the peasants get here on the normal all 22 review. So check out that if you're interested in that. We've gotten a lot of people that have given me the feedback that they've been enjoying it so far this year. So again, hit that link in the description below for that. But that is going to do it for us here, guys. Last thing I'll plug before we wrap up is check out the Locked On NFL Kickoff Live every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern time, where you can get the upcoming preview of the upcoming games from Tanitra Batiste, Jarvis Davis, and Kyle Krabs, as well as the local insiders from across the network. You'll get betting angles and fantasy tips, all that and more. And it's just every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern time across the Locked On network. So if you're subscribed to Locked On Falcons, you'll be able to check it out at 2 p.m. every Friday Eastern time. And if you aren't subscribed to this illustrious podcast channel, then what are you doing? What are you doing with your life? You're not living an illustrious life if you're not doing that. So that is it, guys. Check out Locked On NFL Kickoff Live every Friday at 2 p.m. Check out Locked On Falcons as your first listen. Check out Locked On NFL as your second listen. And why not check out Locked On NFL Scouting, Locked On NFL Draft, as well as your third and fourth listens, especially since, we're doing trades, man. We're talking trades this week. We got, the Kevin Byard trade happened while I was talking, with Miles, and, maybe the Titans are going to be sellers. And there's a certain person on the whiteboard behind me that, they might be willing to sell to the Atlanta Falcons. The Eagles are very active with trading. Howie is always open to trade. There's a guy on the whiteboard that the Falcons could trade for from the Philadelphia Eagles. So if you're listening to the audio version of the podcast and you're like, who are these people you're talking about, Aaron? And it's like, that's why you got to go check out the YouTube. But that's it, guys. Done talking. Appreciate you. Till then.